So first I'm going to throw up here the actual fabric. Now think about where the fabric is falling from. So it's falling from any place that it's pinned to the wall, and everything droops in between. So for example, gravity wants to pull that fabric straight down, but then it's being pulled by the other side. So that impasse is where you're getting the actual wrinkles. Now if you have a portion of your fabric that's folding over on itself, you want to kind of show that three-dimensionality a little bit, right? You can push that three-dimensionality with some shadow and shading, or you can think about some kind of patterning. Say, like if this was a flag, you can get the stripes on it, right? So the stripes kind of bend around behind the fabric, and then we can just kind of continue those lines on the front-facing side of the flag. So it looks something more like this here. Okay, now we know that the fabric wants to fall straight down, but it's being pulled in the other direction, and we know there's portions that are folding on top of each other, so we understand kind of how to do the folds. Now the next thing to think about is, do you want to use lines like this? Look how two-dimensional that looks. It's not a good look, right? Yeah, it looks like the fabric, I just traced it, but lines are not great. So instead we want to think about shadows, right? Think about blocks. So I'm going to make a bunch of these little Nike swooshes, basically. I'm going to kind of just scribble them in. Now I'm drawing on my iPad here, so it's not perfectly one-to-one as far as, comparing it to drawing with your pencil. But I'm going to try and kind of just fill this in a little bit as quick as I can. I'm not worried about doing outlines at all. I'm going to let the shadow become my outline, right? So anywhere that I see a shadow, I'm just going to kind of scribble in these little, Nike swooshes, these little curly cues here. Anywhere that I see any kind of, vertical shadow, we'll just put some scribbles there. I'm not even really outlining the entire fabric. There are portions that are about the same value, the fabric versus the back wall. So I'm just going to leave it alone. Now let's compare, right? Look at how much more realistic that is, because you can see where the shadows are compared to just tracing with outlines. Outlines are not your friend. Stick with shapes, right? Shapes of heavy shadow. Okay, so next, think about the overall proportions. I'm going to divide this into thirds, and look at how quickly, just using this grid of thirds, I can kind of line up where all of the angles are. This is going to help me draw it in proportion so that the height is the same, is proportional to the width and so on. Once I get that overall feel, then I can start kind of thinking about, okay, well, again, using this grid, where are all of my other fold lines going? What direction do I have, right? So it kind of pulls from the left, and that's banking up and around from the right, because both of those pins are pulling, like we talked about, right? The fabric wants to drop straight, but they're pulling on each other. All right, so let's look at all three real quick. So step one is kind of your proportions. Step two are heavy shadows using shapes, and you never do outlines. You just don't. So let's kind of add some value to this. I'm going to fill this in. Actually, I'm going to expand it as well. Okay, so I've got my heaviest shadows, then I've got kind of a medium gray. Now I'm kind of adding on my highlights. Now you can go in this direction if you want to, kind of darken first and use your eraser to lighten, or you can go vice versa and slowly add more charcoal or more, graphite to the paper. It doesn't matter if you're additive or subtractive, really. It's kind of personal preference. But look at how a little bit of highlights here and there, a little bit of shadow, and again, there's no outlines here, right? Even if I go to the background, the background's as important, right? That positive negative space, that background's as important to the realism of your fabric, because it's casting a shadow on the wall. So where it's further away from the wall, the shadow is larger. And we're just going to kind of fade those out a little bit. And that's it, right? That's what we're looking for, right? So I know this was kind of sped up a little bit, but hopefully this helps think about fabric in a different way. Shapes are the answer.